Nous allons parler du combat, du grand combat que la France attend entre Benoit Saint Denis et Dustin Poirier. Euh, Quelle a été votre réaction quand il y a eu l'annonce de Dana White de ce combat?
So when Dana White announced this fight between Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint Denis, I was very surprised. I wasn't surprised that Benoit would want this fight. This is a huge fight for him and a big step up from Matt Frivola, who was his last opponent. I was surprised that Dustin was okay with this fight for multiple reasons. Dustin, I think, is ranked number 3. Benoit, last I checked, was 11. So that's a big gap. And a lot of fighters who are ranked 3 wouldn't fight number 11 because they feel like it's too far of a step back. Number 2, Dustin has said over the last couple of years, like, he needs a fight that excites him, that gets him, he wasn't that interested in fighting Beneil Dariush, who I think was at, the top 5 when that was offered. And so I didn't think that in his mind, Benoit would have had the resume to excite him. He obviously has the skills, but this is a very tough fight and a tricky fight and a dangerous fight for Dustin because Benoit maybe doesn't have the name value, but he's just as tough as anyone in the top 5, in my opinion. Benoit's going to be a title contender and a future champion, and so he doesn't have maybe the lights and glamour and all that comes with fighting a Justin Gaethje or a Nislam Makhachev, guys like that, but he's just as tough. So there's everything for Benoit to gain here because he's fighting a legend like Poirier, and there's everything for Dustin to lose because he's fighting someone as tough as Benoit. So I was surprised. I liked it. I was intrigued by it, and I gave Dustin a lot of credit. This is a guy coming off a knockout loss, so maybe he has a little less leverage, but someone in his position would say, maybe give me someone who I could win. Easy, kind of a bounce back fight, And this is not a bounce back fight. This is a very dangerous fight. He's the underdog going into the fight. So I love everything about fights like that.
En France, cette annonce, ça a été un buzz énorme. Est-ce que ici, ça a été la même chose?
It was met with a lot of excitement here. When Dana White made the announcement, he announced 2 fights at the same time. He announced Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, and he announced Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis. So everyone was like, wow, because these are 2 big fights in the lightweight division, right? So what does this one mean for the division? What does that one mean? They're a month apart, all that. I personally was a little trepidatious in terms of talking about it because I knew the fight wasn't quite 100%. And so I wanted to see, and I would check in every few days, like, is this happening? Is it not happening? Because I know that there's sometimes fights that get announced that aren't agreed to. And so I didn't want to get too excited, but obviously the fans didn't know about all of this. And I know the French fans were excited because that's their guy. And I think the American fans here were like, wow, this kind of came out of left field. We like it. And it was added to an already amazing 299 card. And this felt like the cherry on top.
Il a fait une déclaration très forte. Ici, il a dit j'aime avoir le goût du sang dans la bouche. Ça, on le représente bien. Et est-ce qu'on est dans la communication, ou est-ce que vous pensez que c'est vraiment ce qu'il est
I think that's really who he is. I think he's a different kind of cat. Again, he was telling us about like rescuing hostages and things like that. Like, that's some serious stuff. I mean, the planning, the preparation, the anxiety. Like, you have to be a different type of person up here to do what he's done in his life. And people like that, they only tell you this much. So I think that's someone who invites war in the cage, who invites the battle, who invites the violence. He wants it. And so when he says that he likes to taste the blood, I believe him in a literal way, but also in a figurative way, meaning I believe, like, I remember BJ Penn, he licked his gloves when there was blood on it. Benoit strikes me as the same kind of guy. He doesn't seem like someone who gets, like, weird about that sort of thing, and I think he genuinely loves to fight. Like, he looks like a fighter. His face looks like a fighter, and I think he genuinely loves it.
Il y a son physique, sa technique et son mental. Quel aspect vous impressionne le plus?
Wow. That's a very tough question because all 3 are very, very impressive. I would have to say the mental is probably the first thing that jumps out at me, just because I got to learn more about his story. And there's a lot of fighters who say, I came up here and it was a tough upbringing and I went to a gym, but this is unique stuff, and the more people are going to learn about his story, the more popular he's going to get. So I was just blown away. Like, he's talking about rescuing hostages like it's me going for a walk in the park. Like, no big deal. You know what I mean? And that's how most people in his position would be. But I was just really impressed with him. And then he has such a soft side. Like you see that his wife and his baby came here, and they just seem like such a great unit. He just seemed so happy. You know, it's really fun to meet. Obviously, the superstars are fun to talk to, but it's fun to meet someone who is kind of new to all of this and who's wide-eyed. And you know in a couple of years they're going to get there too. But it's fun to like see them now and see them taking it all in, the machine that is the UFC and their life changing in front of their eyes. It's a really fun experience to witness. And I felt like that was the case because it felt to me like the MSG win was a huge step up. And when we spoke to him, you know, I didn't know that Poirier was next on a pay-per-view in Miami, huge. But you could just feel like something was about to change, and it did.
Si je vous dis un combattant qui passe en 6 mois d'un combat hors du top 15 à une légende comme Dustin Poirier, dans un sur un, vous me dites que c'est quoi? C'est incroyable?
It's extremely rare that a guy who's in the, I don't know, 11 to 15 range is fighting a guy in the top 3. And I give him credit, but I give Dustin a lot of credit for that too, because obviously the guy in the top 15 is going to want to fight at the top, right? Like when Sean O'Malley got a fight against Petr Yan, of course O'Malley's taking that fight. Yan is the one who's like, And it's the same with it's the same with Dustin Poirier. Poirier could have said, no, give me someone in the top 5, give me someone in the top 6, top 7. And so there's a lot at stake here for him. And look at the odds. The 11 guy is the favorite. That's even crazier. But I think it just goes to show how much people respect Benoit, how good he's looked, and probably what happened to Dustin in his last fight probably comes into effect here because he's coming off of a knockout. But yeah, this is very rare. I was trying to figure out on my show like what's been the largest gap in the rankings in UFC history, and there's been a couple, like when Michael Bisping fought Dan Henderson for the belt, that was a big gap. Yan and O'Malley, Khabib and Ally Quinta on short notice, and this has to be up there as well. This is this is 8 spots, and if Benoit wins, I would say maybe one more win and he's in the title picture.